Hi, it's Leaf, and today we are talking about Stardew Valley again. Some time ago I made a video about why Stardew Valley is such a great game, and how sensitive an individual its creator must be to make something this charming and good-natured, while not shying away from harsh, realistic themes. I mentioned some consequences of our actions in the game that are less than ideal, like the fact that if we drive Joja Corporation out of the valley, we actively make people lose their jobs. Or the fact that if we marry Sebastian, we stop him from fulfilling his dream, which is moving to a big city. And when we think about it, there are many more stories like that. So many, in fact, that we kinda stop wanting to think about it. Well, I thought about it quite a lot and came to a conclusion that in many ways the town of Stardew Valley can be seen as a place where dreams die. And of course, spoilers ahead. Okay, let's take Alex for example. At first glance, he's a jock, a somewhat self-absorbed athlete wannabe who puts a lot of time and energy into physical training and his looks. He lives with his grandparents and basically does nothing except for selling ice cream during summer. One would think he's still a teenager, but he's a little bit older than that. He keeps talking about how he's gonna become a professional athlete. He trains a lot and he never misses a grid ball game on TV. Sports seems to be the only thing he cares about. But he never goes anywhere. He never leaves town. He tries to look like a cool, popular guy, and indeed it seems he used to be back in school. But now, he is mostly alone. It's easy to see that there's no way he could fulfill his dream while living in Stardew Valley. When we befriend him, it turns out he lives there because when he was a kid, his father left, his mother died, and his grandparents took him in, and they seem to be more than happy to have Alex with them, but they live in Stardew Valley. And quoting Luke Skywalker, if there's a bright center to the universe, you're on the planet that it's farthest from. So to actually fulfill his dream, Alex would have to leave. But he is not leaving. Why? It seems that either he's not very capable, or his family is in the end more important, and actually both are true. He does have a huge debilitating inferiority complex, but besides that, he is grateful to his grandparents, and he does love them and he wants them to know, because he missed that chance with his mother. So no matter how you look at it, he can't just leave. He seems arrogant and shallow, but it turns out it's mostly a mask, a sort of protective shell he hides in. Because when he was a child, his father would abuse him and his mother, and he would humiliate Alex, calling him a good-for-nothing loser. So now, Alex hones his physical skills and uses them like a shield against people like his father and against his own shortcomings. Nevertheless, he is far from being confident. He was abused as a kid, so he wants to be strong. He was called a loser, so he wants a career that would prove his worth. But, as I already mentioned, he can't leave Stardew Valley. So he is stuck. And the worst part is, he can't really prove his father wrong. All in all, he is not very independent and he will never, quote-unquote, go pro. All he can do is stay where he is doing nothing and lying to himself. The more we get to know him, the more we realize that he's a pretty sensitive and appreciative person, and he does realize that his dream is very unlikely to come true. In fact, it seems his dream is part of this protective shell I mentioned, and he doesn't really have a serious one. He has no goals in life, so he desperately holds on to the one he knows. Of course, he can marry the player, which is a life achievement, I guess, but still, he never really becomes independent, and in the end, he gives up even on this unrealistic dream of his. You may call it growing up, you may call it gaining perspective, but Alex never really becomes his own man, so arguably, his greatest fear, meaning his father being right, does actually, in a way, come true. On top of everything, when we marry him, at some point he'll ask for a relatively large sum of money, but he won't say what for. Later we find out that he bought a big TV for the local bar so that the guys can hang out and watch a game together every now and then. Nice and innocent enough, right? But then he says, "Remember how I used to dream about becoming a professional athlete? This way I get to keep part of the dream alive." This damn TV is a shrine. But there's more to this particular scene than just that. The guys, are all happy about the new place to watch TV, but the reasons they are happy vary from person to person, and as much as this situation helps them, it also underlines the problems they face on a regular basis. George, old wheelchair-bound George. He is happy because he can actually use this little social gathering as a chance to interact with people who usually don't have time for him. Kent is happy because it gives him a reason to remove himself from his house. Kent just returned from war. He suffers from PTSD, feels like an outsider in his own home, doesn't know his children all that well, and to add insult to injury, his own wife seems to regret that she got married and started a family in the first place. And her case is yet another story of regret and hope for a different life in this game. There are many examples, like Marnie, the local old maid. She wants a serious relationship more than anything, and the only relationship she gets is a secret one with the mayor, who is a good-natured but all in all spineless guy, and he cares about his own political and social reputation more than he cares about her. And thus, Marnie is stuck, afraid to lose what little she has, but with no real hope for more. Moving on, Marnie's nephew Shane. He battles depression and has a severe drinking problem. He can be saved by the player and even marry them, and promise to never drink again. So at some point, when we see that he starts visiting the bar more and more often, we get a very bad feeling about this. Well, it turns out he doesn't drink, just like he promised. Instead, he goes to the bar to play a game. Well, no problem then, everything is fine. Until we think about what he says. I'm completely addicted to this game. I can't help but play round after round. Yes, Shane basically replaces one addiction with another. Hooray! Yes, he claims that it helps him fight off the urge to drink, but the mechanism is the same. He's fighting fire with fire. We already talked about Sebastian, but let's talk about him some more. Sebastian wants to leave the valley, but not just because he's got better things to do somewhere else, but mostly because his family situation is not great. His stepfather never truly accepted him and treats him a bit like an intruder. He spoils his own daughter while mostly ignoring his stepson, so Sebastian feels really unwanted. This is probably the reason why he's so moody and dark, and not in terms of his fashion choices, but his personality. And to unwind, he goes on long motorcycle rides towards the city. And he says there's nothing like speeding down the highway with the city lights glowing in the distance. And obviously, it's a symbol of something so close and yet so far, clearly visible and yet out of reach. Because he never actually gets to the city. He always returns, only dreaming about how one day he won't. For now, he doesn't have enough money to leave, so he is stuck. But one day. And then there's the situation with Penny. Penny has lived most of her life in a trailer with a perpetually drunk and disillusioned mother, and she is craving a normal family life more than anything. If we marry her, she wants everything to be so perfect that she basically becomes a step-forward wife. Your mileage may vary, but I find her devotion to homemaking a bit disturbing. Like, she tries to get as much perfection and bliss as she possibly can before someone takes it away from her. And yes, it seems like a happy ending and it seems cute and warm, but actually it comes from a very dark place. And remember, divorce exists in this game, so Penny losing it all is technically possible. Anyway, the list goes on. Many characters are what they are to fill some kind of void, and almost all of them are stuck. Stuck in their lives and stuck in Stardew Valley, stuck clinging to what they know is safe or to dreams they can't fulfill. Fortunately, not everyone in the valley has a dark past, regrets or insecurities. Let's take Elliot. He wants to write a book, but suffers from a writer's block, and this is the worst that happens to him. He is well read and seems very sophisticated, but he is probably the most shallow and spoiled person in a whole town. First of all, is he really a writer? By heart? I don't think so. He just likes the idea of being a writer. He can't even make his own decision regarding the genre of his book. The player has to choose for him. He is a hobbyist at best. He simply likes this lifestyle. He lives alone on the beach because it seems romantic and makes him look interesting. Well, he's not talentless, so he completes his novel with our help, But everything from the way he dresses, speaks, where he lives, to his preferred gifts and his romantic event, the one with the boat, shows that what he really cares about is style. While he's living on the beach writing his book, he is a perfect romantic artist, a beautiful hermit. After he marries the player and starts living on a farm, he enters his cottagecore phase, which is clearly visible in his letters where he paints a very romanticized picture of the farm. Is this a bad thing? Not necessarily, but I can't help but wonder, how long before Elliot gets bored with it? Because he mostly only does what he likes, and he lacks realistic approach. And unfortunately in real life, poetry and pretty pictures can't last forever. Maybe I am being unfair, maybe I am overthinking it. Maybe I'm just old. At first glance, Stardew Valley wants us to think it's all about how heartwarming and simple life can be in a tight-knit small community, how keeping in touch with other human beings is valuable and makes us all warm and fuzzy inside. But the closer we look, the more darkness it reveals, because it's also about how limiting and claustrophobic life in a small village tends to be, how places like that act like tiny black holes that swallow you if you get too close. Which can be bad, but also good depending on one's expectations. For many people living in Stardew Valley, this place is their prison, even their grave, and the older they get, the more they realize there is no way out. They're too closely connected to it, too entangled to just leave. And those who still have options? Well, you yourself can make sure they lose them by simply marrying them. So there, life in the valley can be good. You as the player can further improve it. People can be nice and friendly, and yes, they care about their little community and about each other, but at the same time, they have very little choice. And very few of them are at peace with who they are. Stardew Valley is a game of many layers. It's truly amazing there can be so much meaning hidden in such a seemingly small and simple thing. And the best thing about it is that much of the interpretation is left to us, players, and it heavily depends on how we feel about our own lives. Where I see broken dreams, others may see personal growth. Where I see warning signs and red flags, others may see compromise. And as much as many of those stories are really sad or unsettling, they are also very true to life and make this game even better. And I think that's it, I'm done. Thanks for watching, or rather listening, and I see you next time. Take care, and goodbye.